Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here today. And I want to thank Mark for sharing that, because I am such a visual person that I very much appreciate seeing this and once again reminding myself the sefirot, these mystical aspects of God, are arranged like a human body. And this quality of netzach, or endurance, that we are percolating this week is so important, especially at this point in the pandemic, when each one of us is in a different place of testing that endurance. For some people, it feels as if we are opening up and becoming more home free. And for other people, they're in a place where their endurance is being tested more than ever. And so I want to focus us on this trait of humility, of anava, as it's known in Hebrew, that provides this place for us to balance out. And this is, for me, when I think of the trait of anava, I think of the wonderful teachings of Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and I want to ask Tamar to screen share, if she will, a couple of texts that I'd like to share. And what the first is from one of his great works known as Mesilat Yesharim. What is Mesilat Yesharim? This book written to guide us in the cultivation of midot, of these ethical and personal traits of how we might live our life. And so it's no surprise that the midah, this trait of humility, is one of the fundamental values that is featured in this ethical text on how to live a good life, known as Mesilat Yesharim, meaning the upright path. How do we live our lives in a way that reflects an upright path? Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto was born in Padua, Italy, 1707, and he was an avid Kabbalist. He was a very accomplished, if that's a word we could use, as a Jewish mystic. And this was a huge part of his life. And although this particular text, Mesilat Yesharim, is not perhaps overtly mystical in nature, his underpinnings approaching how to live a good life through balancing the sefirot, these aspects of God's divine presence in us and in the world, very much inform his approach to how he teaches about these midot, these traits. And so for him, he's going to be, I wanted to look toward him to think about what humility looks like through his eyes. So you can see here we have an excerpt on the page for the first text. Let a person recognize the frailty of the human mind and its many errors and illusions, which render it more likely to be in the wrong than in the right. So I love this, because immediately what he's doing is he's pointing us to the fallibility of our minds. And what I like to think of is, in my mind in particular, is this habit that we have of daisy chaining, right? Of like using our intellect, our quick thought processes to measure what is going on around us, to estimate, and actually to come, in some cases, to very quick conclusions that are actually not helpful. And they actually end up sabotaging us. And this is all happening through the mind, the quick mind. So he's warning us to recognize the frailty of our mind and how it can craft these seeming realities for us that then end up sabotaging us, right? They're more likely to be wrong than to be right. Now, this beautiful book, Mesilat Yesharim, has an amazing commentary that was written by Iris Stone, the great Musar Jewish ethical thinker and teacher of our era. And so he has this beautiful image that he puts out and kind of a charge to us in reading this text from Mesilat Yesharim. And he says, meditate on the limits of our knowledge. How great is that? Meditate, use our mind, use our breath, and we're going to talk about our body as well, to ponder what the limits of our brain, of our mind, of our knowledge actually is. And he goes on to say, faced by an infinite indebtedness to the other, an indebtedness whose end cannot be known, and by the future that can also not be known. I think that's a great bumper sticker, right? The future that cannot be known. We realize that what we cannot know has greater import than what we can know, right? Opening ourselves up to what can be that we don't know can have greater impact on us than relying on our knowledge or our assumptions or the daisy-chained stories that we've created through our intellect. And he goes on to say, assuring our own humility is to consider ourselves in every situation as students. These are my italics that I added to this text, right? So for many of us, this reminds us of the Buddhist approach of beginner's mind. This is exactly what Iris Stone is saying. Assuring our own humility is to consider ourselves in every situation as students. Humility, he continues, requires us to approach every person, asking ourselves what we can learn from him or from her, right? Beautiful spin on that from a Jewish perspective. And so when I think about this, when I think about what Lutzato and what Iris Stone are teaching us, it guides me to the body, right? So if the mind is fallible, if the mind can trap me into building structures that can become the antithesis of humility, what is the key? What are other tools that we might have to access that humility? And for me, I go back to this beautiful verse from the book of Job, taught to me initially by Rabbi Jonathan Leider from IJS, that reminds us that where we see God, where we discover our best essence, where we discover anava, humility, is through our flesh, through our body. And it also occurred to me on this day in which we celebrate the independence of the state of Israel, Yom Ha'atzmaut. There are three letters in the middle of this tongue-twisting word, Ha'atzmaut, meaning self-determination or independence, but also Ain, Sadi, Mem, these three Hebrew letters that are embedded in that word, also mean etzem, bone, right? Our bones and our flesh can be the source of humility. That is really what we're doing when we meditate, when we sit, when we stop. We turn our authority from, the source of authority from our mind to our bodies. It's exactly how Mark encouraged us to enter this Zoom room today, right? To check in with our bodies. And so on this day of Yom Ha'atzmaut for the state of Israel, this day of self-determination, the day of looking inside and saying, what is going to help us endure through this idea of netzach? What is going to be our anchor? What is going to ground us? What is going to keep our minds from spinning out of control? And the answer is in our flesh and in our bones. And so I want to guide us today on a body scan, in a body scan. This idea of being guided through our body, checking in with each part of our body as a source of wisdom, as a source of something to inspire curiosity. And so I want to ask you to take your seat afresh, or take your stance afresh, or if you're lying down, to tune into your body in a different way than you have over these last 15 minutes or so. And we're going to start with our feet, the foundation that grounds us into this earth, into the floor. Wherever we are, if you're lying down, wiggling your toes to make yourself aware of the miraculous nature. If you can wiggle your toes. Maybe you can wiggle the toes on one foot, but not the other. The miraculous nature of our feet that hold us each day. What are you feeling in that foundation of your body? Are they feeling firm today? Is there pain? Is there stiffness? Is there the impetus to jump up and down, get out of this chair? I'm thinking about those feet, how they're kind of miraculously attached to ankles and the shin and the calf, the myriad of motion, little minute movements that our ankles, feet are able to make in concert with each other. Being grateful for how this part of our body anchors us, moves us forward, even if we're in a wheelchair or on crutches or recovering from a surgery. How do those legs support us? How do our knees work? Is there a twinge here and there? What can our bodies teach us about limitations, even as we express gratitude for these legs? And as we come up through our thighs and into our pelvis, if we can, awakening ourselves to those sits bones, those bones that allow our backs to feel supported, our legs to work, our hips to move. Feeling that breath, if you can, even down into that pelvis. The expansion on the chair or as you stand. If you're lying down, you may feel an expansion across your lower butt, your back. Giving yourself permission for breath in whatever capacity it can in this moment to go into that part of your body. And if it feels comfortable and right for you, placing your hand or hands on your belly. Grateful for the center of the body. What do you feel? How can you express gratitude for this center grounding place that houses so many of our vital organs, making it possible for us to breathe, to live, to give. And if you can, give your ribs a little wiggle, little circle. Feel what that does in the pelvis. And expanding that, just a little bit of movement into the rest of your spine. What do you discover? What do you learn? What do you feel? What can it teach me? Where do I feel a sense of endurance today? Maybe the answer is you don't feel it yet. But what possibilities are in the body for embracing that endurance with humility? Slight slimmer glimmer of possibility. As we move up into the sternum and the chest, feeling that breath. Is it going into our shoulders, into our back? Where is it liberating? Where is it constraining? And that little bit of wiggling, little bit of flexibility that we had in our ribs and our spine. Feeding that, releasing that up through our neck and our chin. So grateful for all those little tiny exquisite bones, the neck, spine, the base of the skull. The ability to release that jaw if that's available to you. To let it go. To let that lightness radiate into your face, your eyebrows. And to radiate out of the top of your head. That place that we associate with the base of our knowledge, but we often forget that it's really the entire body, our flesh and bones, that allow us to meditate on the limits of our knowledge, to be liberated in a different way. Now we'll take this whole body into a silent meditation for our concluding moments together, and I will bring us back together, meditating on the limits of our knowledge, but not as a source of despair or fear, but as a source of liberation. Bringing our breath back up to our face, our eyes, preparing to re-enter our external environment. We realize that what we cannot know has greater import than what we can know. Our humility is assured when we consider ourselves in every situation as students. And we approach every person and our own bodies by asking ourselves what we can learn. Chag Sameach.
Thank you so much, Susan, for leading us to that beautiful embodied practice and meditation of awareness, of endurance, of Netzach Sheba Tiferet, of Anava, humility. Friends, we join together now. We seal our practice together by providing an opportunity for those who are mourning or observing a yahrzeit to honor the memory of loved ones through Kaddish. And we invite you, if you have a name or names you'd like to include, put that into the chat box now or after the Kaddish, and invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join me. And thanks to Tamara and I for sharing the words on the screen. Yid Gadal, Yid Kadash, Shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Yama Dibra Chirute, V'yamlich Malchute, Chaye Chon, V'yomei Chon, Uchaye B'chol Beit Yisrael, Ha'agala, V'zman Kariv, Yemru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Barach, Lam Alaya. Yibarach V'yishtabach, Shemam V'yinaseh. Tada V'yitalev, La'ila Mikol B'chata, Amen. Shlama Rabba Shemaya, L'chaim Amen V'Kol Yisrael, Thank you, friends, for joining us today in practice. We will, of course, be back tomorrow as we sit into Shabbat on Friday, led by Cantor Heather Batchelor, will be joining us from Montreal. And I want to thank you for being here. Thanks to Tamara and I for holding our tech container so beautifully with skill and grace today. And of course, thanks to you, Rabbi Susan Leider, for leading us so beautifully in practice today as well. And for staying, can you stay on for a few minutes today, Susan? Yeah. Okay, excellent. So you are invited to stay on, if you're able, for a few minutes of conversation about today's teaching and practice. And if you're leaving us now, many blessings for the rest of your day. We hope to see you tomorrow for practice or next week sometime soon. Chag Ha'atzmaut Sameach, and be well. Okay. If you do have a question, please put it in the chat box. Yes, there was a question about the daisy chain. Okay, Susan, why don't we start with that, the daisy chain. What do you mean? What do you mean by that daisy chain?
So, so thank you again to IJS for recommending a really wonderful book on an introduction to meditation that was not particularly a Jewish focus, but what it was meant to do, and Mark, you probably remember this, is to help clergy like myself, who never had a meditation practice before several years ago, to really introduce us to what some of the fundamental basics are of meditation. And this was a springboard for then going into a very, very Jewish context, as we did today and we do every day in the IJS sits. And I will, through the course of this call, I will pull up the name of that book because I am sure that someone will ask about that book.
Is it
So
the
I
8
will.
weeks? Is it the 8 weeks to?
Thank you, Mark. It's
Yeah, I'll get it. It's Williams and Penman, I think. I'll put it in the
8
chat.
weeks to mindfulness meditation, I believe. So it's a wonderful book. And thank you to Mark for digging that up and putting it in the chat. So that was the place where I was first exposed to this expression called daisy chaining. And daisy chaining, as I understand it from that text, goes like this. I'll make one up as I go. Okay, so today it might be windy. Oh my God, if it's windy, my hair is going to be a mess. Oh my God, what about that meeting? Oh, if I show up to that meeting with my hair a mess, everything's going to fall apart. Oh my God, I might lose my job. Oh, what about my family? Okay, so this is daisy chaining. And you can see that by the time, if there were this meeting, this fictitious meeting that I just created, that by the time I would get to that meeting, I would be so verklempt, so undone, as we say in Yiddish, by all of these things that I created in my head, right? Seemingly ridiculous, as I just spun this myself in a fantastic way, but it's really not so far off from the reality that many of us put ourselves through. And then we look and we say, how did I get so verklempt? How did I get so undone? Because I daisy chained, I connected all of these things, by the way, that are in the future and aren't even realistic or true. And then I have ended up sabotaging myself. Mark, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I was a little, I missed some of that because I was busy finding the link. But I mean, I got the context of it. I remember I read that book a long time ago. But you know what? It leads into the question I have for you, which is, I think it was just very valuable to add this idea of anava or balance self in terms of what we knowing and not knowing, a balance, but having a balance between that. So I wanted to ask you this because the Mesilat Yesharim and the Ira Stone commentary on it, of course, kind of in a sense prioritizes not knowing, which seems to anyway. I don't know. I'm checking that out with you. That's how I hear it. It sort of says focus on what we don't know. Don't focus on what you know. And but I was wondering about a balance between being aware of what we know and being aware of what we don't know, which made me think about that weird Donald Rumsfeld quote. I don't know if people remember, he was kind of mocked for this, but it was about there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns, which turns out actually he didn't make that up. It's a thing. To be aware that there are things we don't know, and we're not aware that we don't know them. So that's what came up for me when you said that, is that, oh, just, you can think, yeah, I don't know what the weather's going to be tomorrow. That's a known unknown. But there are all kinds of things I don't know about tomorrow or what's going on right now that doesn't even occur to me to realize that there's the things I might not know. But here's the question. The question is, in terms of practice and thinking about this as Tiferet and balance, where I went with it was thinking, okay, I do know some things. And, but the problem is the daisy chaining leads me to think that, oh, I know this, and then I know that, and then I know that, and then I know that, and then I know that. And I'm constructing a link of knowns, I think. That's how I'm understanding that. Mm-hmm. And this is a corrective to that, to say, whoa, hold on. You have to build into that or integrate that with always having beginner's mind, always saying, yes, or having what I know always be provisional. I think I know this, but I may not. And I always have to, that's one of the things I actually love about like halakha and the Jewish law, is the sense of it, the fluidity of it. It gets fixed and we say, okay, we know how to do, here's how you keep Shabbat. And then there's openness to, well, there's new circumstances, or we never thought about it this way, or, and that provides the energy for growth that, freedom and liberation that it evolves. So short version of the question is really like, what do you think about this idea of finding balance in awareness of what we know, what we think we know, countering that by saying, yes, I think I know it, but I may in fact not know it. And then there's also, and there's so much I don't know. You know, follow-up question to that has to do with doing that. I was trying to do that with my body by saying, you know, I started off like not even being aware I had a body. By the time you were finished, they're like, oh, I have a body from, you know, top to bottom here. But what do I really know about this body? Not a lot. You know, now I'm at least aware that I have a body. So much I don't know. I don't know what's going on inside my body right now, really.
Well, it's a it's like the starting point, the tshuva, right? Returning again.
Yeah.
And it lays the foundation for then discovering. You know, Mark, I was thinking a couple things, and there was someone in the chat who raised a question about knowledge about the past, right? If we're talking about we don't really have this knowledge, but like then, and that's kind of what you're talking about a little bit with observance, like or how we would relate to mitzvot or sacred acts in our tradition that are meant to be an invitation to us to engage deeper. And so I think that the interesting thing for me when I think now about the past is, yeah, we have that knowledge, but we also don't have access. We can't change the past, right? It sounds so obvious to say it, but like, so we have this knowledge from the past, but in this moment, we're different, right? So our relationship to whatever we know from the past is also a constantly moving target. And right, and we know that we can lock ourselves into those narratives. Like, I know this from the past. This is what happened last time, right? This is what happened in that relationship. And that can also, so it's not that we're gonna, you know, wish for amnesia and erase that, but also trying to balance, again, going back to Tiferet, how do we relate to this knowledge from the past while not letting it chain us or catapult us into the future, thinking that we can manipulate all these conditions to change things.
I was wondering if it corresponds in a way to this, like the Serenity Prayer, which is about a balance between awareness of what we can control and what we can't control, right? And in a way, the knowledge, you know, what we know is an aspect of control, right? It gives me a sense of control. If I know it, I feel like I have some, at least the illusion of control over it. It's something that's fixed. And yet, but, you know, there's also what I don't know that's not fixed, and that can be threatening because I don't have control. And so I want to be able to accept that at the same time.
You know, Mark, someone has typed in the chat a little, it says it's a question, but maybe it's somebody saying that I don't know if they're talking to you or me, that you do know more about meditation. And so maybe the question is, I'm not sure, but perhaps the question is, well, wait a minute, Susan, you're saying that there's no knowledge, but yet you're here teaching meditation, right? Of course, you must have some expertise or you wouldn't be here, right? But Mark knows this as well as I do, is that, you know, 5 years ago, I would never have meditated. So the only thing that I know is my experience, right? And Judaism is so amazing in that way. It's so democratic in that way because it's not built on any type of status. It's all about experience, right? So if you invest the time in the practice, then I don't know if I'd call it knowledge. I just have a body of experience through which I can share with other people for them to consider, right? Because there's no forcing anybody to that. So I don't know, Mark, if you, if I read that question that was in the chat, but I think it's so important because I'm not an expert, and I'm just a person who was invited into this practice by IJS, and I said yes. And I had my own experience, and now I'm sharing my experience with other people. So
I'm scrolling through to see if I can find that question.
Yeah, it says question in capital letters, and let's see if I can see who it's from. It's from Yeah, in Zoom, I can only see the first three letters of the person's name. So
Yeah,
C-A-R.
I'm sorry. I can't tell. We're almost at time.
Yeah.
Just want to go back to the body, though. I really appreciated that you did that
Mhm.
through the body. And I guess I'm want to go back to, well, let's go. I was thinking about, okay, so now do I know my body? Having scanned my body? Yes, I do. Yes and no, but I'm mostly aware of what I don't know about my body. And that's really, as a kind of paradigm for this practice writ large, is that we are trying to cultivate openness to what we don't know, as Masilat Yesharim is saying, and Ira Stone is saying, to see every situation, every moment, every person as our teacher, to be vulnerable, really, right? In the moment, to not knowing, not having an answer. It makes me think also about that little, there's a phrase in the Talmud somewhere, I can dig it up. We can always say that, of course. But it's there. I know it's there. It says that we are meant to teach our tongue to say, I don't know. Right? I think it's Mar says, teach your tongue to say, I don't know. And it's really, in that sense, Judaism is really a practice of humility, constant humility, right? Like you said.
I'm writing down that little piece of Talmud, Mark.
I'll send you. Yeah, I'll find it. I'll find the link. I'll put it in there. Okay, we are at time. I'm really glad I know often you don't have the luxury of staying on for a little bit. So I'm really glad you were able today. So thanks, Susan. And, thanks for stepping up. And also, I know you're doing so much to bring this practice to your Kol Shofar community and make the connection with the IJS offerings. I want to thank you for that. You're really a great model in that. And also, I want to publicly applaud your courage in diving in and taking this on and doing it with both netzach, with a lot of strength, and also with a lot of anava, with humility. So thanks for walking the walk.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great day and a festive Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration of Israel's independence.
Right. Everybody go get your falafel and hummus, and we'll see you tomorrow with Cantor Heather Batchelor. Thanks to Tamar Yanai.